My name is Reuben Harpole, and I'm a native Milwaukeean, and we're going to be talking with some very special guests today about old Milwaukee, going back from the 20s through the 90s. And first, we'd like to start out by introducing to you, our viewing audience, our guests. Bill?
Hello, my name is William Rogers, and I am the president of the Milwaukee chapter for the study of Afro American life and history. And I will be one of the moderators for today.
Good morning. My name is Eve Hall Johnson. I'm an outreach specialist for a pre-college program, and I'm also a member of the Association for the Study of Afro American Life and History.
Morning. My name is William Graham. I am a 43-year resident of the city of Milwaukee.
Good morning. My name is Jessie Wray, and I'm a parent in the community here and came to Milwaukee from Mississippi in 1946 and have raised a family here.
I'm Otha W, and I've been here 61 years plus. And anything else?
Okay. We'd like to start with Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham, I remember meeting you over at the Beckham-Stapleton baseball Little League field this past summer, and you and I were talking, and I had a chance to observe you working with our young African-American boys over there, and I was certainly, quite frankly, I was impressed with what you were doing. And I'd like for you to just tell our audience a little bit about how you got involved with sports and how long you were involved with them, and what was some of your observance in terms of working with African-American boys?
Well, it started back in 1976 when my son was 9 years old, and he became a member of the Beckham-Stapleton Little League. At that time, Mr. Orville Bean was the coach, the manager, and I went and helped him coach. And a year later, he went to senior league, so I stayed down and took over the team. And I stayed there for 14 years, trying to help some of the Afro-American kids of our community to become better, have some incentive for themselves. It was a very rough job, and I got too old and I had to give it up last year, which I regret very much. Mm-hmm. But a lot came out of it, and this is a wonderful program for youth. Mm-hmm. And I think more youth should get involved in it, and specifically more parents should get behind their kids.
Right, and that was the thing I noticed about you. You were a parent and you were involved, and it had some payoffs, some results. And right. That's what I wanted you to, because I noticed that you were fair with the young people, but you took no stuff from them.
Right, well, this is the only way that you can be when you're trying to teach a kid. Now, some of the kids have a lot of talent, some of them don't have any. Mm-hmm. So those that don't have too much talent, you have to work with them especially, mm-hmm. In order for them not to get down on themselves because they cannot achieve as much as some of the other guys do. Mm-hmm. But all in all, I let them know that they were team members as well as the guys that played well. Mm-hmm. And by that we survived and won championships 3 years in a row, and this gave them some incentive too, you know, and made them produce better and more and listen to me on a one-to-one basis. I accepted them all. I told them all that they were my children. Right. You know, and there was no partiality there. One kid if I balled one out, I'd ball the other one out, or if I heard one saying derogatory remarks about the other one, I'd tell him that he was in the same area that this kid was.
Right,
you know?
So you dealt fairly with each one of them.
Right. That's the only way.
Right.
What about the parent involvement during that time?
Well, if you go by statistics, the parent participation was very poor, mm-hmm. And it still is today. Parents bring their kids down and drop them off for practice, and then you don't see them no more. Mm-hmm. And then they don't come to practice. You ask the parent why. Well, I didn't have no way for him to get there, or something of this nature. I would always tell them, all you have to do is call me. I'll pick your kid up and take him to practice because I was interested in him, see. But then when the kid didn't practice or he didn't do well in school, he sat on the bench. Right. I didn't let them play.
That was your discipline.
Yeah. And then the parents would come to me and say, hey, why is my son not playing? I paid $20 just like everybody else. I said, well, he's doing bad in school.
Mm-hmm.
And his behavior here is very bad.
Right.
So this is his punishment.
Right. And what would happen then?
Well, the kid would do better for a while. The parent would get on him and do better for a while. And the one area where we really need the parents to back us up is trying to opt to get money to keep the program working. We need money bad to keep the program working. And at one time we didn't charge no fee, but we had to start charging a fee. And we furnished uniforms and everything of that nature. And we tried to have raffles and have the parents to participate. And the parents wouldn't participate in the raffles. They say, I ain't got time for this. Or, you know, they'd always have some excuse.
Right. Now, you know, you were in Milwaukee for 40-some years. What were some of the major events in Milwaukee that you can remember in your lifetime?
Well, some of the major things I can remember how tough it was for black people to get good jobs. That I can remember because I know myself. I worked at American Can at one time, and they paid very minimal wage, and you worked hard. And I left there and tried out on another job, which was really hard, traveling out of state with a traveling salesman driving, and the prejudices were so bad. I couldn't get any place to stay, or people didn't want to serve me in their restaurants and what have you, you know. So I had to give that up. And then I went to American Motors, and without a little hassle, I got hired. They didn't want to hire me.
What was it that was inside of you that did not allow racism to dominate you?
Well, it was determination and the fact that I had to eat and have a place to live, you know. And we so often are tagged with this laziness with black people. Don't look for jobs, and all we want is welfare.
Right.
And I didn't want no welfare.
Right.
I wanted to get it for myself.
Exactly.
I just wanted to ask about that time frame. You spoke of doing the years with American Can and the prejudices that you encountered. What years were that?
That was in 1950.
Okay.
In 50 and 51, I was there. And in 52, I went to American Motors. I started working there September 4th, 1952.
Right.
And I was there until 1985, December the 3rd.
That ended up being a good thing, because there were a lot of brothers working down there then. I mean, Lige Johnson, John Givens, and Adolphus Ward.
Right. The American Motors plant here at one time had approximately 10,000 people working here in Milwaukee.
Right.
They
That's
had
all
3 shifts.
Off of Capitol Drive and Richards.
Richard Street, right. And then in 1978, they closed the plant down. And then I drove from here to Kenosha for 7 years.
What about unions and the labor movement back in that 50 time? Did you?
Well, the unions were quite strong then.
Okay.
It didn't mean too much for black people because we were the last hired and the first fired, so to speak. But the unions were strong and very committed to us as union members, although there was prejudice involved there. It was very outstanding, but you had to be flexible and overcome it, see. And by me being flexible, thank God that he granted me the strength to do this.
I have a question. You know, during that time in the 50s, I was just becoming a part of this world in the late 50s. And I can remember my father, though, somewhat struggling, you know, he was one of the first black lab technicians here. What were some of the ways, though, that you were able to deal with the racism and maybe the pressures and, you know, maybe just not knowing from one day to the next that, I don't know, you may or may not have a job, you know, something may happen where your supervisor or boss may get upset, and, you know, I know during that time there was not a lot of control, or you didn't have a strong say in the things that could happen to you?
Well, the way this was like individual way of handling it. Myself, I was a belligerent type of fellow. I have a lot of people that knew me when I was younger. They said you were something else. You know, I was very belligerent with both. It didn't make any difference if you crossed me without a reason. I just let you know how I felt, right in your face.
In today's society, they call that the aggressive blackmail.
Right. Well, this is the way I was, and I had plenty of things happen to me on my job that every day. But then there were some things that you just swallowed. You swallow it and go on because you realize that you have to eat and you need this job. I remember they had a policy at American Motors. They do not allow any fighting. And I was called a name by a Caucasian. And I hit the man. And a fight ensued behind that. Well, they broke it up and we went to the office, and the man in charge there wanted to know why, and we explained why. I explained my point. This guy says, well, yeah, I did that. So he said, well, we don't have that, and I'm going to tell you what. He said, I want you two guys to shake hands if you want your job, and I never want to hear this again. And my hand was first one out because I wanted my job. Anyway, we shook hands, and then the guy and I, we became good friends. And from then on, I just sort of worked myself into the little clique that they had with the Caucasian people. I got into the little clique and listened to their little stories and laughed at them with their little stories until I got myself situated. And then I was just as capable as they were.
What would be your advice to, you know, the man of maybe the 80s and 90s who have to deal with similar situations? I mean, things have really not changed. You know, maybe it's more subtle. But, you know, I hear a lot of talk when I'm working with young people or even college students where they indicate they're not going to take this, they're not going to take that. But yet we know there have to be survival techniques. There has to be a certain way that you have to adapt your behavior depending on the setting that still will not take away from who you are. You know, I think that's what becomes the controversy. You know, well, I'm not going to change and I'm just going to be myself, and, you know, that type of attitude. But, you know, how would you guide the young person now who's going out into the business world and dealing with that?
The main thing for any young person coming up today, more especially black Americans, is to get an education. Stay within the school system. That's the only way. I don't care what anyone else says, you must have an education to deal with the things that are happening in the world today, because it's more stressful now than it was then, because black people more or less knew their place. They stayed in that place. Now they're venturing out more, but you should also be wise enough to know what to say. And the only way to do that is to get educated. Stay in school.
One question. What about your support groups during that time? Were there things like the NAACP? Could you go to black newspapers and file a complaint and let them know that the rest of the community know that there were problems? Did you feel that support around?
No, we didn't. I'll give you a good example of what happened to us. In 1978, when American Motors closed their plant, we went to the EEOC, that's the Equal Opportunity Commission, and we had a case, we had an attorney, we had a case against American Motors where we were suing them for discrimination of age, because the average one of us that was getting laid off then was up in the 40s and 50s, okay? We took it to court, it went before Judge Reynolds, he threw it out. So there was your support right there. If the EEOC couldn't do nothing about it, then we were finished.
NAACP.
And I have the letter today where they wrote me and told me that, hey, there's nothing that we can do about this, so you just have to swallow it.
Prior to that, did anyone ever have to go to the NAACP to file a complaint against someone?
Well, if they did, it was beyond my knowledge.
Okay.
It was beyond my knowledge that they went. We did have, we could go to the union with our complaints. The union was fairly strong, and they would back us up to a point.
I have one question that relates to Eve's question. I want to know, what was it in your background, in your family history, that gave you this high self-esteem, this high opinion of yourself that would not allow someone else to walk on you?
Well, when I was coming up, when I was a kid, I had no mother and father. They both were dead when I was 5 years old. Pardon me. I was raised by foster parents. They tried to teach me to be more or less on my own, to fend for myself. Okay, some of that stuck. And I had the stick-to-itiveness to maintain that through my adulthood. And that was one of the reasons why that I stayed at American Motors for so long. Was because of that. I refused to let them browbeat me. And with these names, with the jobs, they put me on the worst jobs, you know, and I did the worst jobs and made them look easy.
Hey, all right.
So then they let me in on the good jobs, so as to speak. I was a repairman for 15 years, and they called on me to all the time. My name, Billy Graham was just all over the plant.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a fact.
Great. Hey, let's go with Jessie. Jessie, you had a very unique experience. First of all, you came here from Mississippi. I'd like to hear a little bit about that in terms of where you were born, how you happened to get to Milwaukee, and then the fact, this unique experience that you had as the superintendent of the Federation of Community Schools.
Well, my life started out in, I guess I was luckier than some other black kids from the South. I started out in a family of educators. My mother was an educator, and she had two sisters that were educators, and her father was an educator. And so at an early life, I learned that if you are not educated, and educated doesn't necessarily mean books, it means for the whole system around you. You've got to be educated to what's around you. And that includes the classroom as well. But if you ain't got that constructive education, I mean the basic concepts of education, and I mean when you start out, is that it has to come from all the way from ABCs all the way up. And if you don't have that kind of education, and it doesn't blend in with the society around you, then you're not educated. And so my mother stressed on me very heavily that I had to dig in those books and get them, even from, at that time it was not K through this or that, it was primer all the way up. So we had to dig in our books.
Was it the one-room schoolhouse or what?
It was a one-room schoolhouse, and when we got to the school, we had to go out into the woods. The boys did, and get the woods and make their own fires, because the system in Mississippi did not furnish any buildings. The parents went into their land and they cut the wood and took it to the sawmill. They would give up a certain part of that lumber for the lumber to be cut to build the schools, to build a desk. And the only money that was dispensed to the schools were a little bit dispensed to the teachers. And that salary was no ways what the whites were getting. And the amount of time we got to go to school was 3 months a year, compared with 6 months at that time for the white kids in Mississippi. And they really didn't want to give black kids in the South any education at all.
Well, that, of course, is part of the black codes in Mississippi, where it's against the law to teach you the holdover from those codes.
Right. And as I began to progress through life and went on up and finished high school in a little place called Reuben, Mississippi, where it was called UCTS, Union County Training School. Even in the sports, you found the color line almost completely excluded blacks. that school, for the basketball team I played on for 4 years, I was in high school, and 2 years after I left the school, never lost one basketball game. That history of that record was never told. And I believe that had that been given the right kind of exposure that is given today, a lot of those boys would have went on out and I think would have had very good names for themselves, but it wasn't done.
How'd you get to Milwaukee?
Well, I came to Milwaukee. My folks, incidentally, still live on the same land that they were freed from slaves on. But as you know, at that time, farming and cotton was beginning to be a project that wasn't in terms of money. There was no money in it. So I was looking for a better way of life. And at that same time, young black men were very, very desperately in harm's way there. For instance, when I came home from furlough in Mississippi with a uniform on, they blew a whistle at 12 o'clock at night. I had to get off the streets. Had a curfew there. So my mother didn't want me to be raised in Mississippi. She said, go on and do the best you can. So I hate to see you leave, but I know it's best. So I came on into Milwaukee and met my wife, Mary Alice Ray, who were actually born in Milwaukee. And we raised a family. We have 10 children. And incidentally, all have had some college education, every one of them.
What made you choose Milwaukee?
I had heard two things. One, my mother had came here briefly for a summer to visit. She had some relatives live here. And I had heard that Milwaukee was a good place for raising family. And when I did come to Milwaukee, it was a very clean city. But there was a very, very strong undercurrent of prejudice here. And that sometimes is worse than the open sea of prejudice, because the undercurrent is treacherous.
So you married one of the Jordans, and all of you all remember Jordans on 10th Street, around 10th and Wall.
Yeah, that also was a large family. She came from a family of 12.
Right. Right. So then how'd you get involved with the community schools?
Well, I became involved because at the time, I felt that school was just that important, and I was sending my kids to private school. I sent everyone to private school, and I felt that school was just that important to me. An education had to be for my children. I couldn't afford to, but I couldn't afford not to. And so when the private schools, the Catholic schools and what have you, was beginning to close for lack of support in terms of money, the parents were also concerned at the same situation that they were in. No schools for their kids. They just felt that the public system wasn't giving them what they should have. And so we came together. There was with a lot of the priests and a lot of the Lutheran churches and what have you, and they organized a group called PEP, Parent for Educational Progress.
I remember that.
And when that group was formed, they wanted to know what would be the best way to bring about an educational program that they could follow through with, but also get some legal funding. We also knew that the church question of separation of church and state was going to come into this, so one of the things that emerged from it was the Federation of Independent Community Schools.
Right.
And each school to join that federation had to be separated from the parish. They had to lease the building.
Right.
And they had to be had to have their own parental school board, parent body. And one of the requirements, the parents had to participate. In other words, they had to have parental involvement.
Right.
So
something like 4 hours a week, was it?
4 hours a week, and some was much more than that, because with the amount of funding that we had for the schools and how we had to work to educate the children and pay the bills, it was much more than 4 hours a week.
Right.
But that was a minimum, 4 hours a week.
And of course, the rest is history, and we have 2 of those schools left now.
2 of us still working now, and I must say that the schools was a plus in the community, because what it did do, it taught the system, educational system here, something that parents could be involved in, be involved intelligently.
That's right.
And I think that that, if nothing else happened, that is one of the things that community school taught the community.
Right.
What were some of the names of the people maybe were part of that organizational structure of PEP and the Federation itself? Can you remember some names that might have...
Well, some of the names were, there were so many involved, if I would...
Some of the key folks.
Key actors.
His wife was involved in that. Mrs. Harpole was one of the administrators over at Harpole Community School.
Right.
There were Harris involved in that. Mr. Bob Harris.
Bob Harris.
From the Urban Day.
Urban Day.
There was just any number of people. Wesley Scott from the Urban League.
D. Weiss.
Helped to develop that.
What year are we talking about?
We're talking about the years of the late 60s. And
69 and up.
69 and up. And to me, today, it was still one of the greatest systems, parallel systems was. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't get funded, because there was a very, very jealousy of the public system, which for much less money, in other words, for about 1/3 of what the system was paying per child, we were putting out a better product. And it was done because we had teamwork. We had parents, teachers, and students doing the thing together.
And it was tried because the Ford Foundation tendered an offer of the voucher system.
Right.
Now, of course, we have the choice system, but they offered to develop a voucher system, and it was turned down by the public school.
It was turned on by the public system, and model cities had money to come in here. That was one of the things that, and the mayor was one of the chief reasons why the school is not in operation today. And I haven't, to this day, learned why he was so adamant against those schools, because they were doing a very beautiful job. All the educators throughout the system was in favor of the schools. We had people from UWM, people from Marquette, from all the colleges that were very, very high on the community schools. But there were an alliance of black ministers, and that's the next thing, is some of the churches did not like the community schools because they were suspect in terms of thinking they were helping the Catholics. That was not the case, but some of them still thought that.
Now, I noticed in some of the around the school district, the Pettises were involved. Were they then active at this time, too, with the development of it?
Jane Pettit became involved around 70, 71, 72, and Adele Christensen, who was from the Miller Foundation, became involved, and then the Milwaukee Foundation.
Milwaukee Foundation, and Harry John Foundation.
And the Dirks out of Kansas City, who was in the coal industry.
Danfoot Foundation out of St. Louis.
So you were going to get some outside support.
Yeah. Well, they became excited because people from the Institute of the Black World out of Atlanta, Georgia, sent people up here to look. They were sending people from all over the United States to look at these schools because it was a concept that almost caught the imagination of the community of the nation, much like Polly Williams' choice program caught the imagination of the nation.
Did the total community, black community, support that? You know, were you getting support from some of the other civic organizations that...
Well, as I said, the Urban League was supporting it. The NAACP was supporting it to a certain extent. Many of the attorneys, Lord Bobby was very instrumental. He was one of the attorneys that gave time for the Federation Corporation. So we had...
See, that was because in 1964, May 17th and May 18th of 1965, Lord Barbie had led what was called the Freedom School, the boycotts of the public schools, and the Freedom Schools set up in churches and so forth. So they were like the precursors to this kind of a federation.
Let me ask this. So at that time, there was a lot of debate against the quality of education given in the public schools, even at that time, much like it is today.
Right. And it was not a debate, it was a reality. The end product that's coming out of the public school just wasn't meeting the standards. And
for African Americans.
The Federation of Independent Community Schools was one of the things that helped the city raise its standard, its total standard nationally, so far as the point grades and things coming out of the school.
So it was still the same type of situation where the African American child was behind the Caucasian child as far as their successes, academic successes.
And not only that, he was asked to pay the penalty again. I mean, it's the same thing we talk about busing today. And I get so irritated when I hear people say busing isn't working. And I ask them, what was busing supposed to do it isn't doing? You know, busing wasn't supposed to write any curriculum. It wasn't supposed to teach. All it was doing, making the good schools out there available. It counterfeited the whites' plight out of the inner city. When they run to the suburbs, it counterfeited that move. That's why they don't like busing. And I'm saying blacks have a different reason why they don't like it. They have some good, legitimate reasons. Their school is, their kids is bussed out, and bust in. They don't have no curriculum involvement in terms of that. So they are still paying the penalty. However, it is one of the best things that have come out of it, because it was a remedy order.
So you're in favor then?
I'm in favor until we get some kind of handle on the purse strings. Until you do, and if you end busing today, where would we be?
But you know, sometimes to me, and I believe strongly in education and in developing our kids, but it almost seems like a hypocrisy in the sense that, you know, on one hand we talk about how we want to improve education, and then when we start seeing those improvements made, like with the community schools in that situation, then people want to take it away. You know, I mean, and that is so frustrating. When you start doing a good job and you're seeing quality results, they don't want it.
Well, it's like your freedom. They dazzle your freedom before your eyes each day, and then they take it away. And that's the way our whole life has been. Our whole life has been a struggle. And every time you're doing something that is answering the cause, you find the upper level that crushes you. Just like he said, Judge Reynolds threw the case out. It was the United States Supreme Court in 1906 ruled that blacks shouldn't have any protection. So our courts has been our greatest enemy. And then the management of that approach has been done through the system. And from the president all the way through the local levels of state, that's the people that have managed the de facto system, quasi-system that we're in today. It has been managed so that we cannot get beyond that.
So what do you think we can do? I mean, what can someone like myself do?
It's a byproduct of, as I said before, education and knowing what's around you. And one of my greatest, I think, things that I tried to do is those that I find tied in a knot, be they white or anything, you untie that knot so that you can communicate with them. And that's the same thing we did with the parents. We brought educators in, and when they began to talk too high to the parents that sitting around, he said, well, just a minute. Let's talk in common language. That's what education is supposed to do. Break it down so that the parents understand what you're talking about. Because if you're talking to way up here someplace, you're not talking to the parents. And we found that some of the greatest ideas in the world came from parents who were afraid, other than that, after we brought it down, to bring their ideas out. Because
let me ask, could you explain maybe why the federated school system was successful? You know, I mean, just for, you know, maybe our audience sake, to know what were you doing differently than what the public school was doing? What was happening in those schools that kids could learn and produce and be productive?
What we was doing differently was involving everybody that was involved in the field of education. Your child was involved. We kind of took the kid from where he was and dealt with a reality from not where we want him to be, but where he was. The parents were involved, and the teachers was involved. They had teachers there that were so involved, they were without salaries. So it was a whole teamwork of people that's involved. Even his wife was involved there. She went a lot of days without a salary. So it was a general interest of people that had the best interest of the school and the community at large.
So where in the public school, you're not getting that.
You don't get that.
Different interest groups.
Right.
And maybe that commitment.
You had to be committed to do it. That's the whole point.
The commitment was
That's
it.
the key.
Yeah.
And I worked, let me say, I worked for almost a year without salary.
I have a technical question that I would like to ask you concerning this, especially in the area of busing. When this busing materialized, was this because of the educational system within the inner city being lower in comparison to that in the outer schools?
No, why busing was ordered because, as you know, when the Supreme Court ruled that separate school was inherently unconstitutional and had to be eliminated with all deliberate speed, although the courts were very timid because they could have ruled to punish the people then, but doing what they did, the whites began to take flight from the community. And the courts had no other alternative but to order a remedy. That was a remedy. Now, it did not say, and that's why we wanted the voucher program, that you could not sit down together and work out other remedies. It ordered a remedy. The only thing that was left, because 12 years elapsed after that ruling, they did nothing. And so the courts were left with no alternative but to order busing done in order to carry out what is called integration. Now, let me say something else. To me, it ain't worth 10 cents just to sit in the classroom with a white child, but if it's something in that classroom that I got to get and need, then that's where I want to go. Now, I don't care, you know, where it is. But if that's where I've got to go to get what I need, that's where you're going to find me trying to get. I may be knocked out along the way, but I'm going to be trying to get there.
Right, and that's what they meant when they said desegregation, because desegregation was different from integration.
Right.
And it was also different from quality education. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get quality education
No.
if you desegregate.
Yeah,
all it meant was numbers. You're going to sit next to a white person.
That's right.
Yeah, I understand.
Now, let's go to Otha.
You know, this subject he's saying, it was a different matter at that time because there was more, when I went to school,
When was that, by the year?
oh, Jesus. Well, anyway, here, huh? But anyways, this is what I'm saying, that with the problem is different. Now, see, when I was going to school, this was in the early, I guess elementary school, but in the early 30s.
Uh-huh.
We had two schools primary that time, was 9th Street and 4th Street and McKinley.
Right.
Now, just imagine all the blacks now, but we didn't, where the problem come is when more blacks enter the school. That's when the problems come. It's equal, but not equal. You know what I mean?
Separate but equal.
Yeah, separate, but not equal. You know what I'm saying? But the problem was when 9th Street was predominantly, maybe there was, I'd say about 80-20. You wouldn't believe that back in them days. I said, I've been here since 1929, and things was different. But see, when the problem comes, when the blacks got to be the majority, then that's when the problem comes. See? You know what I'm talking about? I never went, when I went to school, I'm gonna let you ask you a question.
Okay.
When I went to school, I never had a black teacher. All the way through 12th grade at Lincoln High. And see, here's one, they had different standards. There's, back in them days, if he was dumb and he was a good athlete, they pass him anyways. But see, back in them days, it was halfway scared of them, and then the teacher had to do nothing but reprimand, and they weren't learning. This is the problem we still have today.
Did she ever talk about black heroes? Did she ever talk about...
I was in 5th grade. I'm one of them students. I moved about 3 or 4 blocks, and they made me go. I was at 9th Street. They were going to force me. This time I moved 512 Walnut Street, where you go down on the hill. You know where that is? I don't know if it's still there or not. But well, anyways, for a long time, I moved on a Saturday, and Monday I had to get out of that school and go. They were going to force me. My mother refused to let me go to 4th Street. I went to 4th Street about 2-3 days. My mother had me to go to Lee Street. And what happened then, previously Bell Phillips and had been to Lee Street. I don't know. In other words, when I was going at the time, Leonard Brady and all of them had went to Lee Street before me.
That's Attorney Leonard Brady.
Yeah, Attorney Leonard. These men had never had no kind of arrest. These people, I come up under the strain every time a colored kid get in trouble. Here come the cops. See, I got the only arrest on my record. I don't know why I'm into this. See, my daddy come from slavery. My daddy went 2 years at school. That ain't, you know, 2nd grade. And A.O. Smith was made to hire. A lot of people don't know this. A.O. Smith they had to go to Washington, D.C. during the war. And they was forced to hire black. And here's another amazing thing. The people from, my wife was a Mississippi. She had to go to school. The white folks at that time was riding the bus, and the black, they was spitting on them going by, and they was walking. And they couldn't go. She said she went 6 months to school, like he was saying. He's not lying at all. And the white kid was going 9 months. And this is a true statement. Well, anyway, this is what's wrong with today, and that the hiring practice to this day, of course, A.O. Smith didn't hire. They hired 25 white and 1 black, and the whites wouldn't stay. Now, what's happening today is that the blacks got the seniority, and they trying to do. They now got department rights, which they never had before. I retired 10 years ago, and now they got. In other words, they got a black intelligence. I was also the first black vice secretary of treasury. I have a history of I was the first black inspector. I was the first black watchman. And I seen a lot of foul white guy come in there drunk and they take him to the gate. Next day he come back. Color guy come in there had dual standards, see? Now here when I was saying that this is the truth that was told, and the next day this color guy, he don't come back no more. He got drunk, this white guy, and I see many of them do that. I'm at the gate. I worked on gate 8 about 15 years. I was the first black watchman. I didn't see another one till about 8 years later.
Who took A.O. Smith to court? Who did that?
We had very powerful union leaders at that time, but the urban league did all they could. Mr. Scott, and we had numerous of ones.
Well, going back before then, it was Mrs. Lindsay.
Yeah, Miss Lindsay, and then they had another one before that.
Brazil.
But their hands was full. They had so many racial issues and grievance and going on that they couldn't. And then I'm gonna tell you what happened one time that during the process, I was a steward of many years. You have to write it out. And then a lot of the blacks we had, when the stewards was good, then the raises was better. You know what I'm talking about? Good steward fight thing.
Before we run out of time, I'd certainly like for our viewing audience to know what happened with you in sports, and what do you remember about Walnut Street?
I can remember they had mostly terrorists. They didn't have that many terrorists then. The Jewish people had Walnut Street all locked up, and I learned many things from the Jewish people. And what I am or what I become, I was on the PAL lead. The police played a part that they were more. I don't know. I can't express it to it. They were more kind of distant-like, more human-like. I can recall a case. I was mucking around doing something in the swimming pool.
Latin Park?
In Latin Park, swimming pool. And I was mucking around for 4 or 5 hours, and guess what? When I got there, Moody was round back waiting. I thought you'd come in. That's the kind of policeman they had back in them days. You know what I mean?
Cal Moody.
Cal Moody. Always when you did something, they talked to you and going on. I never forget at the time that one time I don't want to call his name. He's dead, but he took me up to 5 and 10th Street on 12th Street and put my hand on the ball, and his hand was on mine, then the white hand was on top of his.
Yeah.
And he called, the store man called my mother in, and my mother liked to kill me in the store, and he said, that's enough. You know, you don't need to do nothing else. Let him go. Yeah. And when I got home, you know what happened again? My mother whooped me again. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? They had real parents, just like in his case went to school.
But I'd like to get to your Lincoln High School. What happened there? And with Jake Beeson on the football team.
Jake Beeson was one of the
track.
Greatest, track. He was one of the greatest athletes. And next year he kicked the ball so high, about 90 yards up in the air, and the ball went. And the next year, they put the goal post backwards, 10 yards backwards. Now I'm saying we beat Washington, and I think we beat North. Back in them years, they would reign about 10 years apiece, unbeaten, unscored upon. Jesse Miller created a riot. Of course, he went to the heart, and Blackburn was the coach. He had a son, Blackburn, was playing as a defensive back. He went all through them. They never laid a hand on them. They created a riot. That's what I'm talking about. Back in them days, you couldn't reach. I don't know, this was in 45.
Did you all take championship?
In 47, we won swimming, basketball, cross country, almost won everything. That was the year I was on 3 of them. And more or less, we had I don't know if Mr. Fuss living yet. He didn't know the first thing. Just what I'm saying, them schools, poor schools got no treatment at all.
Was it predominantly black school at that time?
Black schools that time.
Yeah,
North Division, they had pipes hanging down. When you go down the step, if you was 5'8" or 5'6", a pipe would hit you in the head. You know what I mean? That's how, I'm talking about going down the steps in narrow corridors, no big. We played conference game in a little lunchroom. I could shoot half court all day long, and that's how small it was. And they had conference games. This is the kind of things they did, and they didn't try to change it.
Well, you know, we're going to have to close out shortly, but it looks like we're going to have this group back again so we can go a little bit more into the history of Black Milwaukeeans. We've left out so much. And so, but before we close, I'd like to have a parting statement by each person, some things that may have come to your mind that you wanted to say and you didn't have a chance to say while you were talking, so that we can at least close off with this segment, and then maybe we can continue on with another session.
Well, I'd like to say to the Milwaukee parents that have your kids in school, get involved, know what it is they're being taught, and know why they're being taught it. Because if you are on a dead-end track, in other words, if you're climbing a pole out there, putting the wires up, learning to be a guy that's stringing wires, and they're putting the wires under the ground, the job he's training for is obsolete. So know that your child is in a field that won't be obsolete when his training is finished. Know what your child is being taught and get involved with your children.
Thank you.
I feel the same as he does. We really need a lot of education here. That is the basic thing that most kids need coming up today. Without it, they're lost in this technological world today. If you don't have it, you will not going to make it. They're going to be doing the same things that they're doing now, trying to sell drugs and what have you in order to survive.
Right.
Yeah. They should look at these schools too for giving the curriculum as they do in some of these other schools, and then hire the teachers to do this to teach in these schools too. You know, they shouldn't have to send us kids because to South Division to get a good education. Shouldn't have to do that. No way. And right now, they're, like you said before, the only reason why he's going there now is to sit beside a Caucasian. And that's nothing because the teachers, my son went to Tech. I went down there so many times with the principal down there. We had it so much because he had a thing for my son. I'm not saying that my son was an angel, believe me, you know, but a lot of things that I saw other kids that were doing far more involved than my son, he didn't say much to them, but he was always on my son. So, you know, this is what we need.
Right.
I got one key thing. I found out a long time ago, when I moved from 9th Street, the key is reading. If you can't read, you're in trouble. You can't do no math, you can't do nothing. Now, you know, with them fractions and all like that, if you can't read how the problem goes, it's all over. I found that out a long time ago. And then another thing, I hate to see these parents just let the boy go, not concerned. They should go and help him if he's weak on reading. I believe the churches should do more than they do. And here I want to give a compliment. I can remember the Jordans had a whole lot of kids, and one thing about the Catholic, and they go all the way with you, see. And I know I've been in all these different denominations, and I know that about the Lutheran do an excellent job, and they get a better education than they get in the public school.
Speaking of church, before we cut off, you mentioned that Calvary Baptist is going to have something in 1995.
In 1995, we have our anniversary.
100 years?
I think it's 100 years. It might be maybe 200, I'm not sure. But anyways, I'm on this committee, and we try to get data now. And I have a lot of things that I've been trying to give you. I've been collecting for, maybe 30 years. I'm the church historian.
Okay.
I keep, we have numerous of pastors and things, and I keep all this kind of data. I must have 75 different scrapbooks and things.
Great feat.
Bill, I'm sure you want to talk with him further. Are there any more questions that you'd like to ask our guests, our panelists?
Well, I guess I won't open up anymore. There were some areas that I did want to talk about. I wanted
We did one or two. We got
maybe look at national black figures at that time, the gentleman that you remember. And also, well, let me be more local. What about voting among black Americans during the 40s and the 50s? You know, were they participating on a much larger scale than they are now? Was it still the same problems that we face today? I mean, the community only turned out 10, 20%, 30% of the population, the voting population would turn out.
Yeah.
You know, were there efforts to try to pull that together?
I can answer that for you. It's lousy. It's been lousy. I ran against McGee, and I think out of 10,000, there wasn't 400 votes of all of them. That's how lousy it is. Just lousy. Just lousy. You can't get them to vote. And it was like that before, and it is like that now.
Why do you think?
I believe,
if I may intercede here, I would just like to say this. The reason, or the reasons that I have been confronted with by individuals that I've asked, are you going to vote today? They would say, for what? Okay? My vote don't change anything. Okay?
So no
they feel as though if he votes, you know, things are still going to be bad for him. So this is the reason why black people do not go and vote. Years ago, when they used to go and vote, the white politicians used to come around, buy him a meal, give him a bottle of liquor,
ton of coal.
He'd go vote for him, for this white politician. Okay? This is, I know this for a fact. It happened here, it happened in my home state of Missouri. Now, they don't do that anymore. And the blacks feel as though that he's been suppressed so far that if he goes and votes, it don't make any difference. Like in our union, one man, one vote. It counts.
Well, we'd certainly like to thank our guests for appearing on this program today. And Bill, if you have a final word?
I'd also like to thank them. You've added so much to the scholarship of Black Milwaukee, and as Reuben says, we've got to continue it. There's just so much more to talk about. As we know, everybody's still itching to keep on talking, but I guess our time is limited.
Eve?
Well, I know in hearing your history, that just makes me proud. It helps me to maintain my strength and faith in the things that I can do to affect our community.
Well, to our viewing audience, you've heard it. How we overcame, how we reached down inside of us and grabbed a hold to strength of our strength within, and with prayer overcame here in Milwaukee. Thank you.